Welcome to the British Accent Academy with me, Simon Brampton. In this video, we're going to learn how to speak with a perfect modern RP or SSBE accent. So let's jump in straight away and discover how to speak with a perfect British accent and discover what SSBE actually means. The modern RP or standard BBC English, or whichever terminology we want to use, is now called SSBE, which is Standard Southern British English. What is that exactly? Well, it's the standard form of an English accent. So it's, in some ways, it's an artificial accent. It's not spoken by a majority of people, but it's an accent which is recognized as a standard one, is often used on the radio and on the television. Although in modern times, more people with a regional accent are on the television or on the radio. If you look on the map, you can see that the accent is in fact based on the way people speak in the southeast of England, especially middle class or upper class people who are well educated. For better or for worse, this is the accent. In fact, you can find people who speak like this in any part of England. So really, you could say that it's not a British accent, but in fact an English accent. It is in Britain, of course, but it's focused on England or an English accent. Now we've done the technical part and what it's called. These are the 6 vowel sounds that you need to distinguish yourself from other accents, other native speaker accents. I have chosen these because they are very different from ones, for example, in the United States, in Ireland, or, for example, in the north of England, which we'll see now. So these sounds are or, o, and o. We'll look at these in more detail. So the first one is called the schwa. This is the first one you need. This is the most common sound in English, and it is So it's the weak form found on unstressed syllables. For example, my name. So it's not Simon, it's Simon. It's not Brampton, it's Brampton. It's not Dodson, it's Dodson. And you find this on words which are not important. For example, function words from this list that I have here below. And I deal with these in another video. The important thing about the schwa is that you use it in 20% of all phonemes in a normal sentence. So for every 5 syllables that you use, 1 is going to be the schwa, and sometimes more. Present in all varieties of English, but not always the same as in standard British English. For example, in British English, as I say, we say so Peter's a teacher. But in the USA, it's pronounced similar to the sound. So, for example, we can say Peter's a teacher, and with a type of an R sound at the end in these cases. But it's more R than in British English. That's why I've included it, to distinguish it from the Americans. The second sound you absolutely need is the sound. So this is where you open your mouth like this. It's quite a short sound, and it's pronounced from the back of your throat. And it's, of course, voiced like all vowels. The tongue below and to the back of your mouth. So we say bun, shut, nothing, love, enough, flood, and does. The reason this phoneme is important is because it distinguishes it from the pronunciation in the north of England for this sound. So if you see this line, this is an approximate line that divides the south in the blue-purple area and the north of England and Wales in the red colour. In the north, it's pronounced more like So, for example, if we come down to these 3 sentences, in the north, we would say, I run for the bus. I have fun in the pub. A cup of tea. cuppa, a cuppa. Whereas in standard Southern British English, and in fact, in the blue area, we would say, I run for the bus. I have fun in the pub, a cup of tea, a cuppa. So it's very important to distinguish yourself from the people in the north of England. Now, the third vowel or phoneme that you need to speak perfect Southern British English is R. So it's like the R that we just did, but it's a little bit more open. R, like that. So it's a bit longer in some ways, and also pronounced from the back of your throat. R. And in fact, if you go to the doctor in England will say R. So you go R, and you open your mouth a lot, so you can stick out your tongue. R, like that. Now, the only two places in the native English speaking world that use R are the south of England and South Africa, amazingly. So what this sounds like is, my father is rather fast, or I can't ask Bart to start again. So this distinguishes it from practically every other accent. Very important. The next one is or. Notice my rounded lips, or. The tongue goes up a little bit more, or. This is also very, very standard English. So listen to this. A straw for my water, please. For example, in America, water, it's more and it's war. Let's water. So British.
What do I have on my head?
Water.
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 This is water.
This is water.
This is water.
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 The other sentence, I thought I saw your daughter. Instead of I thought I saw your daughter. Very different from, for example, American English.
What about this?
Straw.
Straw.
Number 5 is bottle. Bottle. In America, we want bottle.
What's that?
Bottle.
Bottle.
Bottle. So again, rounded lips. Or. The tongue goes back a bit in your mouth, and it's low at the front, and goes back, up and back. Oh. And it sounds like this. The dog is on the log. Donald, not Donald Trump, Donald wants that yacht. Or maybe it is. I've got a watch. I've got a watch. So, again, very, very British sound. And our last one is a diphthong. And this really distinguishes British people from people in America especially, and people in the north of England, and practically everywhere else, in fact. This is so British. So if you only learn one of these, learn this one. Because it's a diphthong, it has two sounds that go together. So it's O, oo, o. So you notice in the diagram, it begins with O, like that. And at the end, you notice there's a W sound, O. So you have to include the W at the end. Very important. Let's practice these together. I go on my own. She throws a stone. I know you're home alone. So I'm obviously exaggerating these, but this is the sound, and it's so important for you to be able to copy these, to imitate it, to be able to speak with a standard Southern British English or modern RP. How do you feel so far? Do you think you can do that? Yeah? Okay. You're ready for the next part. And we only need 2 consonant sounds, because in English in general, to differentiate accents, we normally differentiate them with vowel sounds. Now, you need 2. One is the unvoiced t, and the other one is the voiced r, r. Let's see how these work. The R in English, you notice here, I've got a little diagram so you know how to pronounce it. There's a little ridge behind your little part behind your tooth. And you put the tongue at the top like that, and you r. At the beginning of a word, we do pronounce the r, because if not, what would it sound like? Roger, red. So yes, we pronounce it. And before a vowel, foreign, forever, forever. Now, we call the R in British English, in standard British English, non-rhotic, which means basically you can't hear it. So at the end of a sentence and before a consonant, you don't pronounce it. So this is, for example, in the first one, before a consonant, article. So you don't go R, no, bargain, not bargain. And at the end of a word, star, not star, more, not more, moreover, no, moreover. Remember, the R in the middle is pronounced because it's between vowels, but it's not pronounced at the end. So in America, this is where you can hear the R sound in most accents. Or, for example, our stores are open. So again, the R is pronounced because it's before it joins another word. And I have a video about liaison or connecting speech on this course. So that's non-rhotic. So in those situations, we don't pronounce it. And that makes you sound more British. Now, another important one is the t. For example, in Britain. Now, we're going to compare this to a phoneme, which you might have heard of, called the glottal stop. In absolute standard, perfect, correct standard British English, you need to pronounce the T. Now, it's always pronounced at the beginning of a word, because if not, it wouldn't make any sense. So we say, for example, team or two. And remember that the sound is pronounced again against this ridge, this little part behind your top tooth. The tongue goes up and then down. You don't touch the tooth. It's behind and at the top. T, 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 t. All right, so you go to, team. So in standard British English, we pronounce it, Peter, sit at the back. Pat, it's better to meet later. So that is the absolute perfect standard British English. But things are changing even in the standard form, in the modern form. Let's see. And the glottal stop is beginning to appear in certain positions in a word when it's the T. Now, before a consonant in standard British English, it is now becoming more acceptable not to pronounce the T. So you could say about now, or you could say about now, or you could say a lot more, or a lot more. So you relax the T. At the end of the word, it's also quite acceptable. In fact, here we've actually seen that the about is at the end of the word and a lot is at the end of the word, but it's also before a consonant. So we can say forget or minute. We don't say minute or forget, except if we're giving more emphasis. In the middle, when a T is in the middle, it's not so acceptable to use the glottal stop. So I'm going to use the glottal stop here, and we can see that it sounds less well-educated and less middle class. It sounds more working class. Oh my God. So listen to this. Britain, city, Twitter, latest, photo. That is definitely not acceptable. Although you do sometimes hear people on the BBC say Britain, rather than Britain. It's one word that, because maybe it's because it's so common, it's acceptable. But you should say Britain, city, Twitter, latest, and photo, including those other sounds that we've studied. So again, in standard British English, we could say Peter, sit, sita. Maybe the other T here is not pronounced so much at the end. Even in standard British English, sit at the back, sit at the don't have to pronounce it so strongly. Or Pat, important because it's the name of a person. It's better to meet later. To meet later. Meet later. Meet later. So just very, very soft. Things are changing. A language evolves and the accents evolve. If in doubt, pronounce the T, but you'll find if you practice a lot, then your accent. So if you want to acquire a standard Southern British English accent, then the first thing is to, well, watch a video like this one, and you become aware, you become conscious of these 8 specific phonemes which really do distinguish the standard Southern British English accent from other accents around the English-speaking world. The next thing is to get a lot of input from the BBC, from Downton Abbey, from The Crown, etc.
Mamma, may I present Matthew Crawley and Mrs. Crawley, my mother, Lady Grantham?
What should we call each other?
Well, we could always start with Mrs. Crawley and Lady Grantham.
And then listen and repeat and practice. For example, on my special British Accent Academy course, where you can perfect your British accent. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to continue improving and perfecting your English accent, British, then I suggest you continue watching more videos, and especially the next one, which I have chosen for you. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.